I'm Lynn Nash, your host of Let's Talk About Conflict. Thanks for joining me today and for being willing to talk about conflict. It's not typically the thing people want to talk about, so bravo, you've made it. Today, we're going to talk about who. In legal terms, I am an attorney mediator in the state of Texas, licensed only in Texas. I am not your attorney. This is not legal advice. There's a big disclaimer on my website. You should go read it. But bottom line is, in law, we talk about who, what, where, when, why, how. I can't even go into all the hows about conflict because I don't think I can come up with every which way that you can find conflict and how to create conflict. So I'm not even going to try. But I want to talk about who. Let's talk about who. Who does conflict happen to? I bet you know this answer. Conflict happens to everyone. That's right. You are correct. Conflict happens to everyone. I don't think there's anyone who gets through this life really, truly avoiding conflict. There are some religions that do a beautiful job of being peacemakers, but they even talk about the inner conflict and having to calm the inner self. So there's conflict even within ourselves, right? Everyone has to deal with conflict. So the who? Yeah, you guessed it. You, me, your mom, your friend, the spouse, everybody. Yeah, conflict. I study this, I think about this. I try to be positive about this in all ways. And yet this morning I was running around trying to pull different things. And am I forgetting something? And I'm driving in my office today. And so, hello from Dallas. And so here I am going, what am I forgetting? What am I forgetting? And my husband finally looked at me and he said, would you just get out of my house? You're driving everybody crazy. Just leave. Go. If you don't have it, you'll be okay. It's okay. Now, that choice there. I could be irritated with him for saying, get out of my house. But I wasn't, because I recognized from 26 years of experience that he was trying to help me. Now, why do I know he was trying to help me? The tone of his voice, the way he prefaced it, the way he suggested an outcome. All of those little layers are all involved in how I understand and help conflict within myself, conflict within others. So, how do you learn those skills? If everyone, and I do mean that, if everyone in the world is going to have to deal with conflict, then everyone needs some skills, which is where Let's Talk About Conflict has its complete origins. I want people to have skills on the other side of this. I don't just want to talk about it. I want you to have a way of thinking about, okay, in that 2 a.m. when you're going back over the stuff that happened, that you're like, God, I really wish that hadn't happened that way. And now what am I going to do? Well, start applying some of these skills. Okay. And then next time you won't still be chewing on it at 2 a.m. Fingers crossed. Conflict can feel like a storm, right? I want you to visualize with me a boat being tossed around out on the ocean and seeing that little boat just being tossed every which way. And that boat looks completely out of control and completely out of options. And that is where the phrase weathering the storm comes from, right? That little boat's just trying to weather the storm and hopefully make it out alive. I think we can do better than weather the storm. Okay. Let's put some skills on how we weather the storm, just the way the people on that boat are applying their skills in knowing how to keep that boat upright and knowing how to keep the water out of that boat so it doesn't sink. You need some skills when you're in a storm, right? So, two skills we're going to talk about today for the who, for the everyone: active listening and evaluating. Okay, say it again: active listening and evaluating. Let me break this down for you. So, active listening means You are literally not thinking about something else. You are actively listening to what someone is saying to you. Now, if you're like me listening to this podcast, I'm probably at the gym or I'm driving or I am literally doing at least one or two other things while I'm listening. That is not active listening, right? And that's okay because that's what podcasts are for. But at the end of the day, when you are in conflict and you are trying to assess and understand, active listening means you gotta stop thinking about all the other things or doing all the other things or looking for that flight, fight and flight, looking for that flight. I got to get out of this. Active listening. When you feel a threat, slow down and listen, ask questions, seek information, which means listen when you ask the question. Don't assume you know the answer. Lawyers are quick to say, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to until they get a deposition and they ask all kinds of stuff. And you're like, oh, man, I'm just trying to find out. Ask the questions, seek information rather than firing an immediate response. Active listening. That is the crux of helping yourself when you're in conflict. And frankly, you're helping whoever you're in conflict with as well. I think about, we've just gone through the holidays, and I think about how many times the people working retail, and a lot of it's seasonal work, right? They're working retail and they may not have the answer because they haven't worked there 20 years, right? But everybody wants it and they want it now and they want it fast and they want, you're just completely useless if you can't give me what I want immediately. Well, maybe they're not useless. Maybe they just actually can't help you. So we got to slow down. We got to pay attention. We got to read and assess with our active listening skill to say, okay, here's my question. What is the answer? Here's my next question. What is the answer? And then once you get an assessment of what is happening, you can then reply and say, I think what you're telling me is X, Y, and Z. Is that correct? Is that correct? Check back in. Because if they popped off an answer at you, it may not be, or you may be misinterpreting what they're trying to tell you. Check back in. Is that correct? Active listening. Okay. The second thing I want to talk to you about today is evaluating. Evaluating, right? So, what does that mean when it comes to a skill when you're in a conflict? So, when you're evaluating, it's going to allow you as the listener to form an opinion of what you heard before you develop a response. Goes with the active listening. See how things, it's like it all goes together. It's crazy, right? But you need to be listening and thinking to develop a response instead of having a knee-jerk reaction. That is the primary reason conflict keeps going. Knee-jerk reactions without assessing and without listening and without looking for clarification. Do not and listen, I'm not perfect, all right? Not sitting here saying, I never do that. Of course I do that. But I recognize when I do that and I apologize most of the time. Okay? Don't be in the apology business. Be in the do it right the first time business. Just makes your life easier, right? So evaluating. The listener's got to form an opinion of what they heard before developing a response. To form this opinion, you need to remove emotions. Yeah. And what do we do as people? We use a lot of emotions. So you need to try to remove your emotions, just listen to what was said and apply sound reasoning as you're making a judgment. So let's go back to the example I gave you. My husband this morning saying, would you just get out of my house? You're driving us crazy. He was saying to me, whatever you're doing isn't working. Whatever it is you're afraid you're missing isn't going to be that bad if you do miss it. And you told me you wanted to be on the road by this time and you're still standing in the house. Would you go? he was trying to help me. Now, if I had had an emotional response to that, it would have been like, well, who are you to tell me I have to leave my house? What do you mean? I mean, and I've done it. All right. Not perfect. But if you can take the emotions out and apply the sound reasoning before you make a judgment, you're going to have a much, much, much better actual communication. And from active listening to evaluating, you can then move to a response. So you got to listen, you got to ask the questions, you got to check in, you got to pull the emotions out, you got to weigh and value what you've now learned, then assess and try and put together a response that's going to move the conflict towards resolution, right? You want a defined thought, not a knee-jerk reaction, not something that you didn't take a minute and break down. Now, all right, to the everyone, humanity out there, yeah, this is not simple. This is not easy. It sounds really easy, and I can give you all the emotional and psychological and social science reasons of why people blah, 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 blah. Doesn't matter. What matters is how you learn to hear yourself pop off responses versus taking a few breaths, asking a few questions, and getting a clear sense of what is actually happening in the conflict. That's the goal. So, talk about active listening, and we're talking about evaluating. I think people can do the active listening sometimes and still have that immediate response. It's that evaluating moment where you take a breath. I mean, I don't really think you can run in the other room, right? We're back to fight and flight. Yeah. I don't want you to fight immediately, but I also don't need you to flee the scene. Stay put and stay with it and be a little uncomfortable and start breaking things down so that those barriers of communication are moving to the side and you can have a real conversation that allows your feelings and experience and need to be heard by the other person and their feelings and emotions and needs to be heard by you correctly. I'm using my own life and my spouse as my example, but the same could be said in work. You get a project and you don't quite understand why it got assigned to you and not who's got next to nothing on their plate. How come they didn't get this assignment? And then you've already got that hang up in the back of your head, and then you didn't get enough explanation on the project, and so you're not sure how to start, but you feel like you have to start, and so you got all your internal conflict going, and then you're going to build an external conflict with your manager because you didn't go to the manager and say, I don't think I have enough information here. I need some more. Now, say you do go to the manager and you get that and you get your head bitten off because manager's having a really rotten day. And it's not really about you at all, but you're the one who takes the bite. You may or may not have your manager come back and say, I'm sorry. Like I said, don't live in the apology like I've had to do. But if you do it, go apologize and say, what do you need? How can I help you? How do I make this clear? Or outline it yourself. I think this is what you want the project to be. I think this is what you want the end result to be. If I'm incorrect, will you tell me where I'm missing it? This is the ways of active listening and evaluating to understand how to actually get where you need to go and not push a conflict, not build a conflict, but to have the skills to weather that storm like that little boat, right? And give people the ability to be heard and be heard without the emotion. But what is the need and what is the goal? And then respond, right? So this was our Who show on Let's Talk About Conflict. We're all in it. We're all just in it trying to figure it out. And I do believe most people are not out to hurt you. Some people enjoy it. Would never claim that's not true. But I really do think at the heart of it, people really do just want to do the right thing most of the time. Not everybody, but most of the time, the majority of people out there are trying to do the right thing. So, with a few more skills, such as active listening and responding prior to responding, active listening, evaluating prior to responding, there it is. You're going to feel a little more secure in your part in a conflict, which is the goal of the podcast. So that's the show for today. I hope that you will take a minute and send us some notes because this is all a learning curve and I appreciate all the help I can get. Positive and negative. I've got big shoulders. I can take it. But this is really meant to be help. So let us hear from you. We look forward to it. You can find us on the web at let's talk about conflict.com or on Instagram with the same name handle, and look forward to hearing more from you about what you want to talk about and what you want to learn about. So until next time, have a great rest of your day. Bye.